Pro football is king. That we all know. But which teams have the edge? Which players will shine this week? That's the information we're all trying to find out. And VSiN's got the answers for you. Now, on Inside the Numbers, get the very best information from VSiN's hosts and special guests on the biggest NFL games of the weekend. The best of VSiN, the Pro Football Edition, right now.
Welcome to the first edition of Inside the Numbers, the best of VSiN. I'm Sam Panayotovich. For the next 2 hours, you will hear analysis on all the NFL games for the weekend ahead from the VSiN hosts and guests. And who better to kick us off than the legend himself, Brent Musburger, and his guys in the desert. We lead off with them taking a first look at this week's games.
Week 2 of the National Football League. Some terrific division matchups on tap, not to mention a rematch of last year's AFC Championship game between the Patriots and the Jaguars. Let us start in the NFC South. The Atlanta Falcons, who lost their opening game to Philadelphia 18-12, will host the Carolina Panthers. In another low-scoring game, the Panthers took care of business against the Dallas Cowboys 16-8. So Carolina will be at Atlanta, Vinny.
And, Brent, this is a game where the Falcons, with 3 extra days to prepare, 4.5 on the opener, now sitting at 5.5, the total 44. Both teams dealing with some injuries, right? Tight end Greg Olsen for the Panthers. Darrell Williams is also out there, offensive tackle. But then again, we know that the Falcons have incurred some injuries as well to Deion Jones, Keanu Neal, they're both out. So this is a game where both teams are going to have to make some adjustments. If you look at who had the tougher first matchup, it would certainly have to be the Falcons, Amal.
You know, Vinny, you alluded to the fact that Keanu Neal's out. Brent, I don't know if a lot of people realize on a national level how good this guy is at the safety position for the Falcons. This is a big blow, but I still give the advantage here in this matchup to Atlanta being at home, coming off an 0-1 start. They're going to need this game. Carolina did they get that win against Dallas. And I also like the fact that Carolina has 3 additional days. They played on Thursday in that lightning weather delay game in Philadelphia, but I think this is a good opportunity for them to bounce back. But for me, Brent, when I look at this number, this was a stay away just simply because of the success that the Falcons had against Carolina last year. And I was not going to lay the 6 here with Atlanta, though.
Taking a look at just the rushing, Amal and Vinny in their opening game, it's not good when you look at an NFL team and your quarterback is the leading rusher. 13 carries for Newton for 58 yards and 1 touchdown. They're going to need a better effort from the running back. You do not want your quarterback to be your leading rusher.
Brent, that's a terrific point. It's a red flag. It's scary because when you see that, you realize too that there's an injury about to happen, or potentially that's about to happen, more so than if he gets sacked on a breakdown or a blitz.
Brent, you're absolutely right. I mean, these 13 carries too many. Christian McCaffrey, 10 carries for 50 yards, but they're going to need to be more effective. And the other thing is you mentioned about the running game. You've got to be able to keep Matt Ryan and that offense off the field for as long as you can.
Yeah. No question about that. Now, let us go to the Green Bay game, which is one of the games of the week with the huge question mark. Even if Aaron Rodgers goes, how effective will he be against the Minnesota Vikings? Don't forget, the Vikings are the team that knocked Aaron Rodgers out last season with that collarbone injury. And a week ago, the Vikings hosted the San Francisco 49ers, and they defeated Jimmy G. 24-16 was the final. Then in a classic comeback in the second half on a Sunday night game in Green Bay, the Packers edged out the Chicago Bears, who had dominated them in the first half, but they fell by a single point, 24-23. Vinny, I know it has been off the board, but for the sake of discussion, what would Vinny Maiulo put on this if it's confirmed that Aaron Rodgers cannot play against the Vikings?
If he can't go, Brent, you're going to see – I think the guys at the Westgate did a fair job in making the game 7 for the Super Contest. And again, when you factor in the fact that Rodgers is worth anywhere from 9 to 10 points to the number, that probably figures out to be the case, because we know that if he does play, he's not 100%, so you can't make the Packers a field goal, which would typically be the number, right, in this divisional matchup. So the 7 is probably going to be a fair number, and if nothing else from a perception standpoint, simply because Minnesota is the healthier team. And again, they got to Rodgers last year, really put an end to the Packers' playoff hopes for the season with that hit on him.
You know, Brent, when I look at this matchup, we've been looking at it completely from the Green Bay side, and rightfully so because of Aaron Rodgers' status. But I think one thing that cannot be overlooked is this Minnesota Vikings defense and the importance of this game to this team, because they know this is a division game. Whether Rodgers plays or not, this is an opportunity for a hobbled Green Bay team to be beaten in Lambeau, and then eventually you'll get them back at home. So the Vikings, to me, from a betting perspective, are in a pretty good spot, just simply because they know what's at stake. And this team, by signing Kirk Cousins, has gone for Super Bowl or bust.
And keep in mind that against Garoppolo, the Viking defense that Amal referred to intercepted Jimmy G 3 times. Now, he did throw for 261 yards and a single touchdown, but 3 picks, very, very hard to overcome that. Vinny, let's go back and reverse it. Say that Mr. Rodgers is able to go. You've put it at a 7 with the backup quarterback there. What would you put it at if Rodgers is going against the Vikings Sunday?
I think the game is probably a pick 'em, Brent. I think and he's not 100%, so you can't really. It's hard to make the Packers a favorite because he does have an injury to his left knee. So I would say the game is probably closer to a pick 'em if he does go.
I'll tell you right now, even if Rodgers is in there and as good as he is, I expect to see this Minnesota defense bring pressure. You've got a lockdown corner in Xavier Rhodes. I think they feel confident in being able to win the one-on-one battles with their DBs. And you get after him. And look, I mean, I know nobody's going to come out and say this, but you got to hit Rodgers. You got to put pressure on him. That's the name of the game.
Good point, Amal. But here's the one thing, too. Let's go back to the Minnesota game against the 49ers. As bad as the Niners played, particularly Jimmy G, and again, a complete offseason's worth of film to break them down. I have to tell you, the Niners not only had a chance to cover that game, they had a chance to really win that game with 1 or 2 less mistakes against the Minnesota Vikings.
As a guy who was on the 49ers in a teaser, I didn't see it that way. I thought I was very fortunate to be able to cover the teaser number there. I thought this Minnesota defense really dominated.
Oh, they were good.
Jimmy G and company.
But they the Niners were not. It was not as one-sided a game as you would think.
Even though the Vikings may be the better team, I think all three of us agree with that. It is never easy to go into Lambeau and come away with a W. Ask the Chicago Bears. We will stay in the NFC, but we will move to the West. And a team that looks like they're going to be in it all year long in regards to winning that conference and perhaps even making it to the Super Bowl. The Los Angeles Rams, who buried Oakland in the second half on Monday night, are hosting a very disappointing Arizona Cardinal team, Vinny.
Brent, I will tell you, the Cardinals, there were 2 teams that took the biggest negative adjustment in my first week. The first was the Bills. The second was the Cardinals. Now, I don't think the Cardinals are quite as bad as they showed. I'm going to give them another week. But I think the Rams are every bit as good as we thought they may be. I think it took a first half of a very spirited Raider effort, but I think it took the first half for them to shake off the preseason, which they really didn't get involved with when you look at it, right? Think about it. Goff did not play the entire preseason. So I took them a first half of football to get going. This is a game here where we're probably going to see the Rams climb to 13. In fact, it is 13. It has gotten to 13 already in some spots. So Rams here are going to be the play. They're going to be the most popular play by the general public this week. This is a team that is also built for now. When you look at the offseason signings that they have made, along with how successful they were last year, this is a team that's committed to getting to the postseason and making a long run.
Brent, I want to advise something. If you like the Rams in this matchup, Vinny alluded to the line being 12.5 or 13, depending on where you look. I think you have to grab the Rams now. If it goes to 13.5, that's a much more detrimental number. But 12.5 coming down to 12, and I don't believe that'll happen, is not as bad for you. So I think that's something to keep in mind. McVay in this offense will be able to score some points, and I think that'll be the challenge in terms of the Cardinals being able to cover this matchup. But I'm going to tell you some big picture with this Rams team. And I could be completely wrong. I am just not as high on this team as everyone else is. Everyone else thinks this team is right there with Philly and Minnesota. I don't see it the same way. I think New Orleans is ahead of them. I just think, the difference is Jared Goff. I think Gurley's great. I think the defense got outstanding individual talent, but I'm not as high on Goff as everyone else is.
I have to tell you, I came away from the Monday night game more impressed than I thought I would be with Goff. First of all, I don't think I realized how big he is. He can really see the field when he's back there. He was very calm. McVay adjusted at halftime and said, you've got to get the ball more into the hands of Gurley. You know, he's our wheel horse. Brandon Cooks takes the top off the defense. Sure. He was able to throw it to him. I was actually struck. Actually, I feel better about the Rams than I did before the game, okay, to tell you the truth. And Vinny put his finger on it. He didn't take a single snap in the preseason. He needed a half to get the rust off. So the coaching staff and working with him, and they came on strong. And those guys, Peters and Talib, they took the wide receivers of the Raiders out of the game. They took a man-to-man. They chased them all over the field, and they were invisible. Carr threw the ball 40 times, only 9 of those passes to the wide receivers. It rattled him so much they brought Bryant back off the street this week, and we're going to see him in Denver. You know what I'm saying, guys? All right, now, we go down to a game that I've been waiting for because I know which way the public is going to go. In his career, Tom Brady has never, as in ever, lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And from my point of view, we got him just where we want him. I'm all about the Jaguars, a home underdog this week.
Brent, you know what? There's been some initial support to your point. The Patriots actually opened as 2-point favorites, sitting at 1.5 here. I think you'll see the Jags getting some support. But this is also one of those games where you've got the ultimate public team in the Patriots. Patriot money is never in short supply. So let's say this game continues to go lower, you'll see plenty of Patriot money. This will be one of the best two-way games, I think. And I'm glad that it's an afternoon game. So 1.5, the total 45. Jeremy Hill is out, the running back for the Patriots. So the question is now, who do the Patriots reload and retool back there as they've had to do in recent years? Leonard Fournette. We know he hasn't practiced much this week yet, if at all. So we'll have to see how but I have to believe he's going to play. You've got probably the best defensive secondary in the league in the Jaguars against one of the all-time greats in Tom Brady. So it's a terrific matchup. I think it's a game that'll generate a lot of interest, and I think there'll be action and support for both of these teams in this game.
You know, a couple of things in play here for me. First of all, I like the point you made about Brady being undefeated in his career against the Jaguars. I will point out one thing, though. In 10 of those seasons, the Jaguars either were at 500, 9 out of those 10 years they were at 500 or below. So that's another thing to keep in mind. I expect to see the Jacksonville coaching staff be a little bit more aggressive than they were in Foxborough. This is a revenge spot for the Jags. And to me, this game means more for Jacksonville than it does to New England, because I think New England knows they can beat Jacksonville in theory at any time. But Jacksonville needs to mentally know they can beat New England. And this game could be critical in terms of home field advantage as we get towards January.
Absolutely. That's what doubles the importance of this game between them. A week ago, the Jaguars, despite Odell Beckham having a big day, the Jaguars prevailed 2015 over the Giants. The Patriots at home beat Deshaun Watson and the Texans 27-20. So there you have that. Speaking of the Giants, as a road underdog, they go down to a place. Now, I was all about, and probably still am, the Giants. However, I'm hearing too many people jump on that same bandwagon. And the one thing I know, One thing I know, when everybody gets on that train and says, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, choo, 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 this is going to happen, this is going to, forget about it. It doesn't. What about the Giants and the Cowboys?
Cowboys, Brett, we're going to go back in time here. It's a throwback game, and by that I mean this. Cowboys are a field goal favorite, and for years we saw this matchup as the home team being in a field goal favorite. You look back at last year and the year before, the Cowboys were 5.5 and 6 point favorites. And 2 years ago when they had that great playoff run, and remember they ran off 11 straight 2 years ago, they were bookended by losses to both of those losses to the Giants. Last year these two teams split. There's concern here for the Cowboys for the biggest reason being they do not have a passing game. As bad as the Giants, or I should say, really Eli Manning looked last week. Giants are another team that really could have, really had a chance to win that game against the Jags. So you have a game here, Cowboys 3, the Sunday night game. It'll be one of the more heavily bet games of the weekend. I think you'll see support for both sides in this game. Again, just like I said, never at a shortage for Patriot money. We're really never at a shortage for Cowboy money either. The total, I'm a little surprised, has come down from 43 to 42, but I do think we'll see that change, and they'll bet the over in this game of all.
Brent, I need a co-engineer on this train. You can hop on the Cowboys with me here. I expect to see them ground and pound it. Ezekiel Elliott did not have a ton of carries in the first half of that game against Carolina. I expect to see Dallas run the football. Jacksonville wasn't phenomenal running the ball against the Giants, but still put up 137 yards. I know Dallas's offensive line may not be what it was the last several years. I still think they're good enough when you look at Tyron Smith on the left side. I think Dallas looks to run the football with Ezekiel Elliott to set up the pass. And he is a workhorse back who gets better as the game progresses. I like Dallas as the slight home favorite here.
Barkley versus Elliott. Bet on that graphic appearing early on NBC Sunday night.
Coming up next, Westgate Sportsbook Director John Murray joins Jonathan Von Tobel and me in studio on Between the Sidelines, where we touch on every game this weekend.
This is Inside the Numbers, the Pro Football Edition, the very best information from VSiN's hosts and guests on this week's biggest pro football games. You can listen to VSiN on SiriusXM Channel 204. Watch us online at vsin.com and follow us on Twitter at VSiN Live.
If you didn't catch VSiN last week, here's some of what you missed.
And I'll tell you, this will be one of the heaviest bet games of the weekend, just given its position. And again, we love having that first Monday night with a doubleheader. Is very exciting for us. I wish we had it every weekend.
I love that because it will be the most bet game.
Yeah.
We got some other good ones. I think the New England game is New England and the Texans. That should be a great game. The Thursday night game, I think, is a terrific game.
Yep.
But when we count the dollars bet, it'll be on that last game.
Well, everything will be going to it, too, right?
Everything's going
carry
to
over.
But, Vinny, you know the psychology of bettors. They're either going to press if they're ahead, and they're going to try to get even if they're behind.
The public ended up being on Michigan. That game had so many line moves. It was incredible. Notre Dame opened like 3, then Michigan went to 2, then Notre Dame went to 2, then Michigan ended up closing 2.5.
Yeah.
That game was all over the board. And you know what? I mean, people want to hang Harbaugh, but, it was a close game. I mean, statistically, they had the same amount of first downs, same amount of yards. Michigan had one more turnover, and Notre Dame made 1 or 2 more plays than they did. Very even game. So if you're a Michigan fan, don't hang yourself yet. I still think you got life.
Hey, let's review them all. Let's see where the discrepancies were. Nothing real different and all that. I nailed the Chargers right on the button there. Until you get to New Orleans.
Right.
I said New Orleans minus 10 against the Browns. You said it's 8.5. Give me the Saints all day long in that one. I don't love the Redskins at 5.5, that's for sure. Ramsdale, again, that's kind of... Here's the other one, San Francisco. And again, we haven't seen the Lions play, so it's a bit of a stupid exercise. But I have the Niners more than a field goal in this one. So the Saints and the Niners, to me, are the ones that jump off the page. And I kind of like the Bears Monday night. Now, these are all first reaction.
The Steelers appear ready to start James Conner this week, even if Bell reports. I think Connor's a pretty good back. Now, he's not Le'Veon Bell, but I don't think there's a monstrous drop-off. How about you?
No, I agree. I mean, the point spread's not going to adjust, in large proportion because of, going from Le'Veon Bell to Connor. Certainly it's a drop-off, but, when you have as much talent on offense as the Steelers do, I think they're going to be okay.
Welcome back to Inside the Numbers, where you get the best insight from VSiN's experts on this weekend's biggest pro football games.
Welcome back. Westgate Sportsbook Director John Murray is a huge Redskins fan. He grew up around D.C. with season tickets, and JVT's favorite team is the Colts. So, of course, we started our segment on Between the Sidelines with a preview on Redskins Colts.
Indianapolis and Washington. You are a Washington guy, John Murray.
I had Redskins season tickets for many years.
There we go. So you are an expert. And they are.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far, but go ahead, Johnny.
They're a 5.5-point favorite in this one against the Colts. You opened this up at 3.5. It immediately shot up.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm fascinated. I'm not sure where this ends up by the time kickoff comes around. My initial thought is it drops somewhat. I don't know how far, so I will go in the range of 4.5.
I'd be surprised if this thing went up to 6, John. I think it's going to come down a little bit, right to around that number you said. Redskins don't really have much of a home field advantage. FedEx Field, the worst stadium experience in the NFL. Not that I think there's going to be a lot of Colt fans there. I'm just saying I don't think there's a big home field advantage for the Redskins there.
They travel well.
I think that line will come down a little bit. I'll go with you. I'll lock in 4.5.
Nice. Yeah, 4.5. The opener makes sense. I'm just copying off whatever he says.
I was going to say we're all in agreement through 2. This is not.
That'll be an interesting show if we all just. Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I concur. All right, 5.5 is also the spread between Atlanta and Carolina, and another spread that opened up 3.5 and immediately shot up. I was somewhat surprised by this, just because of the struggles we saw from Atlanta, especially in the red zone on Thursday night against the Carolina Panthers. It's already at 5 here at the South Point, but 5.5 in your book. I would think again this is another one that comes down.
I agree with you. Not to keep doing that,
Yeah.
but I think you're right. And we saw a lot of sharp guys on the Panthers in the preseason and future betting. Carolina was a real trendy, sharp team.
Yeah.
They looked pretty good against Dallas, although I don't think much of the Cowboys, as you know. But I think that line will come down, maybe 4.5, 5.
Okay.
I think the Atlanta will win this game, but I think they're going to cover this game. So I think it should go to 6, but it won't because you're going to have sharp money on the Panthers. And people will remember what they saw on Thursday night. Atlanta in the red zone is awful because Steve Sarkisian just doesn't know what he's doing. They don't throw to Julio Jones. He got them all the way down the field a couple drives, and then they took him out on first and second down in the red zone. So I think that'll be in the minds of bettors. I think they should go to 6, but I think the market will dictate. You'll probably go back down to 5 at a lot of places.
Sam, if only they had an elite receiver to go to in the red zone, it would make Sarkisian's job that much easier.
He's only 6'4", 220.
He had a hell of a catch, too, that over-the-shoulder grab that they ruled an incomplete pass for no apparent reason.
Yeah.
Julio Jones had an incredible game on Thursday.
You think you use them between the 20 and the goal line. They use them 20 to 20 and then don't use them inside the 20, which to me makes no sense.
Oh, they even take them off a field when they get to the red zone. It's ridiculous.
It is really questionable. And Atlanta, they really could have won. Both of their last 2 games were losses to the Philadelphia Eagles going back to last season. And they had their chances to win both of those games.
So this one's off the board from what I can see here. And, of course, we don't know what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers. Minnesota in Green Bay. Let's say Aaron Rodgers plays. When this was posted originally, it was Green Bay, if I remember correctly, minus 2.5 in that range. And then, of course, started coming down because of the news about Aaron Rodgers, the knee, and what we saw on Sunday night. If Aaron Rodgers plays, where does this close?
Well, I got this question a lot during the game Sunday night.
Yeah.
We closed the betting on the next week's games when the Sunday night game kicks off, just in case something like Rodgers' injury happens. So everybody was asking me, what did we move the line to? The betting was closed. It's important to know that. I think that the line will close around Pick'em, John. I think Minnesota should really be favored in this game, honestly. And I didn't really agree with that 2.5 number. I was advocating for a lower number. I don't like the Packers. I said last week I thought the Bears were better than the Packers at every position other than quarterback.
Yeah.
And I think Minnesota is much better than the Packers at every position other than quarterback.
If you were to make this line Bears-Packers this weekend,
yeah,
what would you make it? It wouldn't be 7.5.
No, I think it'd probably be somewhere like 4.5, maybe 5. So it's a good question, but Aaron Rodgers is just so great. He covers up for so much on that team. You can't go too low with it or you're going to end up with huge liability because the Packers are always a very popular bet team.
I'd like to think Minnesota would close as a small favorite, but you also have the other side of bettors that think, wow,
All Aaron Rodgers has to do is win at home. So there will be probably good two-way action here. It probably evens out and lands on a pick.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I like the Vikings here, and they should probably be favored, even if Aaron Rodgers, we know he's going to give it a go. Chargers and Buffalo. I think this is going to be a tough spot to guess because you would think the Chargers are going to be a public spot. They're 7-point favorite here, 7.5 over at the Westgate. But they're coming off of somewhat bad loss against the Chiefs, where it looked like they couldn't stop anybody defensively for the most part because of all the injuries. Buffalo, we know what happened week 1 against the Baltimore Ravens.
It's a struggle.
So I tend to think, even though we're starting to see the hooks disappear, by the time the public gets their hands on this number, we get to kickoff, this goes in the range of 8.5.
The public is going to be all over the Chargers here in this game, John. We know that. But I think the Bills might end up being kind of like the Browns were the last 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Where the Sharps they can't help themselves.
Value.
And they just keep taking the value on the Bills, the perceived value on the Bills. We took a $40,000 bet minus 7.5 already. I know we're going to need Buffalo every week, so it's kind of pointless to say that we're going to need them.
Yeah.
But I think this line might actually come down. I think it might go down to 7.
I almost fell into the trap, Sam. We have our 5 bets we have to submit for Points Spread Weekly. I sat and stared at Buffalo plus 7.5 for like a good 10 minutes.
So did I.
And I couldn't do it.
I couldn't do it either. Gladly, we both passed.
Yeah.
I think this gets to 8. I don't think the Charger money stops.
Yep. And we saw it with the Ravens game against them. We saw it with the Saints, even though it didn't work out for bettors against the Bucs. That one kept moving up as well. Houston and Tennessee not on the board at all because, of course, Marcus Mariota, the questions about his elbow, couldn't feel his hand when he was playing the Dolphins. So we will move on then to Kansas City and Pittsburgh. And this is moving in the direction that I thought. Steelers open up 5.5. It is now 5. No shot it goes up. This is only going down, especially after what Kansas City did. And you see what Pittsburgh did against the Cleveland Browns. I'm going to go about 4.5.
I won't be shocked if it does go up. The Steelers are such a high power rating at home. Ben Roethlisberger is so different at home versus on the road. I could even make a case this is a must-win for the Steelers coming off the tie, Johnny.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if this thing went up a little bit.
What if Le'Veon plays? Ooh, da, da, da.
Yeah, but in his first game last year when he was off that long holdout, he didn't do anything. That's just from what you see. But, again, it's a long holdout. If he does play, what kind of form will he be in?
I don't think he makes that big of a difference. I said this last week. I mean, James Conner played fine. They didn't lose that or tie that game because of James Conner, because they missed Le'Veon Bell. They tied that game because they turned the ball over 6 times.
And still didn't lose.
Yep.
Amazing to me that a team wins a turnover battle at home 6-1 and still doesn't win.
Yeah.
I don't think that's ever happened before.
What are you going with this number?
I think it goes to 5.5 or 6.
5.5 or 6?
Yep.
All right. Moving on then, the Jets coming off of that huge win. As you mentioned, you put these up and then you take them off once the games play.
Yeah.
You guys originally had -1, revamped now to New York Jets -3 off of the thrashing of the Detroit Lions against the Miami Dolphins, and now 2.5 here at the South Point. I actually think this is it. I would think this is exactly where it stays because of that key number.
I think it's going to come down a little bit. I mean, I know that the public is going to be looking to back the Jets because they had such an impressive win. It's fresh in everybody's mind. I think that number might tick down a little bit into the 2.5 range, Johnny.
Which team do you like more going forward, Miami or New York?
I would say New York because I don't really like Adam Gase and I don't really like Ryan Tannehill. The Jets really should get better as the season goes on with the rookie QB. They've got a lot of good young players on defense. I don't think they're going to ever look as good as they did last night, Sammy, but I think that they'll get better as the season goes.
So you guys have the Jets at -3 right now. I would agree. I think the 3 disappears, and you get the Jets -2.5, -2 by kickoff.
Okay. Philadelphia laying a field goal right now against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We know what the Bucs did in Week 1, and we know that the Eagles struggled offensively against the Atlanta Falcons in their Week 1 meeting on Thursday. Yeah. But again, we're sitting on a field goal here. So, John, I'll go to you. And again, I find the same situation as the last game we just discussed. I don't think there's much movement off this number, if any.
This number, I made this game 3. I don't really see a problem with that number at all. Yep. I think that's the right number. Philadelphia, 3 extra days to prepare for this game. Tampa Bay coming off of a huge win on Sunday. It's kind of a tough spot for the Bucs. Yep. Look for the public to definitely back Philadelphia here.
Oh, the public will be all over the Eagles here. I get the defending Super Bowl champs. Like I did win by a field goal, and I don't lose. This one probably, I think it goes to 3.5. Stage of Casinos has 3.5. I just feel like there's going to be a public avalanche.
You're going to see some 3.5s out there.
Definitely.
For sure,
yeah, it's only going. I don't think you're going to have a lot of public buy on Tampa.
I do think 3 is the right line, though.
Okay.
All right. We move on to Cleveland at New Orleans. I was shocked. So you guys put this up 7.5, and immediately it goes to 8.5. I'm amazed by the fact that this is moving so much. And granted, it's a bounce back spot. But the one thing that I know I can believe in, I think, in the Cleveland Browns, I don't know about the offense. Defensively, they're going to be a very good team.
When is Cleveland going to go to Baker Mayfield? I mean, all kidding aside, their defense looked fantastic on Sunday. They've got studs all over the defense. I think this line is probably going to close somewhere around 7.5 or 8.
So come right back
Yeah,
down.
I think that because you know what the Sharps do, Johnny. They love those Cleveland Browns. Tyrod Taylor really, really struggled last week. If he doesn't play well against that Saints defense that just gave up 48 points to Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think the Browns should make a move there.
Coming up, the Packers play the Vikings on Sunday, and the will he or won't he play of Aaron Rodgers has dominated a lot of conversation on VSiN this week. That's next on Inside the Numbers, the best of VSiN.
This is Inside the Numbers, the Pro Football Edition, the very best information from VSiN's hosts and guests on this week's biggest pro football games. You can listen to VSiN on SiriusXM Channel 204. Watch us online at vsin.com and follow us on Twitter at VSiN Live.
If you didn't catch VSiN last week, here's some of what you missed.
And I'll tell you, this will be one of the heaviest bet games of the weekend, just given its position. And again, we love having that first Monday night with a doubleheader. Is very exciting for us. I wish we had it every weekend.
I love that because it will be the most bet game. And we got some other good ones. I think the New England game is New England and Texans. That should be a great game. The Thursday night game, I think, is a terrific game.
Yep.
But when we count the dollars bet, it'll be on that last game.
Well,
That's
everything will
gonna
be going to it, too, right?
Everything's going
carry
to
over.
But, Vinny, you know the psychology of bettors. They're either going to press if they're ahead, and they're going to try to get even if they're behind.
The public ended up being on Michigan. That game had so many line moves. It was incredible. Notre Dame opened like 3, then Michigan went to 2, then Notre Dame went to 2, then Michigan ended up closing 2.5.
Yeah.
That game was all over the board. And you know what? I mean, people want to hang Harbaugh, but, it was a close game. I mean, statistically, they had the same amount of first downs, same amount of yards. Michigan had one more turnover, and Notre Dame made 1 or 2 more plays than they did. Very even game. So if you're a Michigan fan, don't hang yourself yet. I still think you got life.
Okay, let's review them all. Let's see where the discrepancies were. Nothing real different and all that. I nailed the Chargers right on the button there. Until you get to New Orleans. Right. I said New Orleans minus 10 against the Browns. You said it's 8.5. Give me the Saints all day long in that one. I don't love the Redskins at 5.5, that's for sure. Ramsdale, again, that's kind of... Here's the other one, San Francisco. And again, we haven't seen the Lions play, so it's a bit of a stupid exercise. But I have the Niners more than a field goal in this one. So the Saints and the Niners, to me, are the ones that jump off the page. And I kind of like the Bears Monday night. Now, these are all first reaction.
The Steelers appear ready to start James Conner this week, even if Bell reports. I think Conner's a pretty good back. Now, he's not Le'Veon Bell, but I don't think there's a monstrous drop-off. How about you?
No, I agree. I mean, the point spread's not going to adjust, in large proportion because of, going from Le'Veon Bell to Conner. Certainly it's a drop-off, but, when you have as much talent on offense as the Steelers do, I think they're going to be okay.
Welcome back to Inside the Numbers, where you get the best insight from VSiN's experts on this weekend's biggest pro football games.
One of the bigger stories of the week, obviously, was the status of Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers, who injured his knee last Sunday night before he hobbled back in and led Green Bay to a huge comeback over the Bears. It leads off the discussion between Matt Humans and Jonathan Von Tobel on Between the Sidelines.
Let's get to 3 and out. First down, of course, in the National Football League. Aaron Rodgers, the story of the week thus far. We saw the amazing comeback against the Chicago Bears. You see this from Tom Pelissero, Packers coach Mike McCarthy. Aaron Rodgers will work in a rehab group today. Not a setback, says it's day-to-day. Also, at the bottom, asked if it's encouraging Rodgers at least can do rehab work. McCarthy says absolutely, but won't say if Rodgers may practice at all this week. Quote, we'll see what tomorrow brings. Now, if you got this before they pulled it off the board, got to at one point Minnesota minus 1.5, which is a great number here, especially Matt Humans, if you get to see Deshaun Kaiser play quarterback for the Green Bay Packers.
If Kaiser is a quarterback for the Packers, lay 7 with the Vikings in a heartbeat. This kid is a mistake waiting to happen. You saw it last year with the Browns, 0-15 as a starter. He threw 22 picks. He gets in relief of Rodgers on Sunday night against the Bears. What happens? Strip sack by Khalil Mack, and then a pick 6 to Khalil Mack. It's a hopeless team with Kaiser at quarterback against the Vikings because this defense is way too good for a mistake-prone quarterback like that. You know, you go back to last year, and the Packers with Brett Hundley were 3-7, and one of those was an overtime win against the Browns.
Ugh.
I mean,
don't remind me.
They actually beat the Bears on the road as underdogs for the first time since like 2008 or 2009 in that series.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the Bears were kind of false favorites in that game. You could sense it that week. But the Packers looked awful a year ago without Rodgers. And it's not going to be any different this time around with Kaiser. And, in fact, it might even be worse with Deshaun Kaiser. Now, that said, I expect to see Rodgers on the field Sunday. I think this is a little bit of gamesmanship. When you injure a knee like this, you're going to want to take about 4 days off. You know, he's not going to be out in the practice field jumping around. And I don't expect to see him out in the practice field till, I don't know, Thursday. I never expected to see him out there till Thursday at the earliest.
Walkthroughs, yeah.
Maybe Friday. He doesn't even really need to practice to play in the game, but it's a big division game at home. It means a lot. I know Aaron Rodgers said he's going to play. Like you said, the adrenaline, maybe some painkillers influenced that statement that he made Sunday night. I expect he's going to be out there against the Vikings. This is a team that knocked him out for the season last year in the middle of October.
Revenge spot.
Big division game at home. I think Rodgers is going to be okay to play by Sunday. Now, if he is out there, and all reports are positive in terms of he's got a little mobility, feels good on the knee, maybe the Packers close as like 1-point favorite, something like that. Otherwise, I really feel like you're probably going to see this line close Minnesota -1 or 1.5.
Yeah, so in the range, if Aaron plays, it's going to be in the range of the Thursday night game, right? 1.5 in that range. I personally think even if he plays, or of course if it's Kaiser, I think the Vikings probably close as a favorite just because of what we saw from the injury. And I still go back to Sunday night when he's trying to tie a shoe and he can't even bend his knee, so he's doing it in that weird like runner stretch almost because he can't even bend the knee to get down to tie the shoe. We have this.
Actually, as much as I want to see Rodgers play in this game because you know, his best quarterback in the league.
Yeah.
In a sick sort of way, I want to see what the Packers do with Deshaun Kaiser.
It's like a car accident.
Rodgers, yeah, it's almost like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's you can't resist. How bad could it be if Deshaun Kaiser starts against the Vikings defense? In a sick sort of way, you kind of want to see it.
It's almost like I watched at the Westgate. I watched football with Adam Hill and Mitch Moss, and I kept going back to that Ravens and Bills game because it was just so much fun to see what was going to happen next with Nate Peterman in that offense and how bad they were going to be. And it could be a similar situation, especially against this Vikings defense.
Right.
We have this, and you wrote this up. You know, we did this last year. You did this, of course, this year in terms of quarterback point spread value. And, of course, it always predicates, like Aaron Rodgers is great, but it's always predicated on who is behind him. And Aaron Rodgers, with Deshaun Kaiser behind him, is worth 9 points to the point spread. This is via Chris Andrews. And again, it's important who your backup is. And you see this is just the NFC North in general. Matt Stafford to Matt Castle, it's a 6-point difference. Kirk Cousins to Trevor Siemian is a 4-point difference. And then Mitchell Trubisky to Chase Daniel, a 2.5-point difference. But Deshaun Kaiser, Aaron Rodgers, and you and I kind of talked about this on Monday after that Sunday night comeback. You could make the argument that it's even worth more than 9 points.
Yeah, I wrote a story for the New York Post. It was in yesterday's paper, and I said it's reasonable to say Aaron Rodgers is worth 10 or maybe even a little bit more to the number because you come up with that number based on the quality of the backup quarterback. The drop-off from the starter to the backup in this case is so dramatic, it's ridiculous. You've seen Deshaun Kaiser in less than a half of action against the Bears turn the ball over in the red zone and also turn the ball over deep in his own territory in a pick-six situation. Aaron Rodgers had to come in that game the other night. He had to overcome his injury and his lack of mobility against a Bears pass rush that was all over him in the first half. He had to stay away from Khalil Mack. He had to clean up Deshaun Kaiser's mess and overcome a 20-point deficit to win that game, and he did it. So he's a tough guy, obviously, to bet against. I was on the Bears that night plus the points. Fortunately, I did not bet the money line.
Yeah,
if I did, I would have been sick at the end. Did you bet the Bears on the points?
No, I wanted to get cute because it's the whole thing with everybody's on one side, so I'll go the other. I went with the Packers point spread. Ultimately, did not work out. Let me ask you this. Aaron Rodgers, let's say the game plays out the same way, except for Aaron Rodgers does not get injured. He still leads the comeback. He's perfectly fine. He just gets stymied for the first half, and he's healthy. What's the point spread here? Is it 3?
No, I think if the situation is Rodgers is fully healthy and that knee injury had not happened, I think the Packers would have been 2.5-point favorites.
Okay.
I think it would have been less than 3.
But to your point, though, I mean, the swing from going to Deshaun Kaiser, about a 10-point swing.
Here's the deal. I believe it is a full 10-point swing, maybe even 10.5 from Rodgers to Kaiser. The thing is, with this Minnesota defense, you need mobility.
Yep.
Rodgers leads the NFL in touchdowns, passes from outside the pocket in the past 10 years. It's really not even close. He's such an accurate thrower on the run. If he can't get out and run, and not necessarily run for 5 yards or 10 yards. I'm just talking about get outside the pocket and run and hit receivers while he's on the run. If he can't do that this week, that's a big setback for his style of play and how you beat this Vikings defense. So mobility is really important against the Minnesota defense, and we'll see if Rodgers has got that this week. I mean, it's not going to be easy in a week. That's a recurrence of a previous knee injury that he had, that left knee. And I don't think he's going to be as mobile as he needs to be, but he could have enough to beat the Vikings. I'll just say that probably a full 10-point difference in the spread from a healthy Rodgers to Deshaun Kaiser.
Yep. And by the way, if he's anything like in Sunday night when he came back, where he was just kind of hopping around, couldn't move at all within the pocket, it's not going to be great. Moving on, second down, Greg Olsen. So he was somewhat of a late addition to the injury report going into last week, and now all of a sudden it pops up here from Adam Schefter. Panthers tight end Greg Olsen plans to rest his fractured foot. Quote, a few weeks and play rest of the season, source texted. Olsen is optimistic he can wait until after the season for any surgery. And you saw him on the sideline of that Cowboys game with the walking boot, on crutches. Didn't really look great. Let's hear from Mike Garafolo of NFL Network with a couple more details, saying that injury reserve definitely in play here for Olsen.
Their reliable target for Cam Newton, so this is going to hurt the Panthers. And you talked about what they announced. They said it was on a monthly basis that he will be evaluated, so usually that means multiple months. When a guy's week to week, that means multiple weeks. Month to month means multiple months. He's going to try to rehab that. So I would imagine that IR is definitely in play here. Now, remember, you can put a guy on IR. You don't have to designate him at the time he goes on injury reserve, that he can come off later. That's a rule change within the last couple of years. So you're going to need the roster spot if you're the Carolina Panthers. So would not be shocked if there's a move to put Olsen on injured reserve later today. His teammates, you can see him walking off the field, his teammates were telling reporters after the game that they didn't like the look in his eyes, that Olsen knew immediately that something was seriously wrong there because he had suffered this injury before, and that turned out to be true. When he was on the sideline in the, with those crutches, that was a bad sign, and their fears have been realized.
Carolina against the Dallas Cowboys, 4.8 yards per play. 293 total yards. Wasn't the best offensive performance that we've seen. And, of course, Greg Olsen missing some time. That is not really going to help them out at all.
No, Greg Olsen, like you said, has had this foot injury before, so he's not going to bounce back quickly and come back from that. So I definitely think he's headed to the IR, and his situation, you want to get healthy for the final couple months of the season. If you can make it back by November and play the last 2 months, that's great. But right now I think the Panthers have to move forward with the mindset that Greg Olsen's not going to be a part of their offense for the first couple months of the season. I think IR makes perfect sense here for Olsen with this foot injury.
Yeah, and just to give you an idea, and it is, of course, just one game, but like 4.8 yards per play, Panthers are 24th in terms of yards per play on offense in the league. So that's not a great offensive performance at all. And you saw it when you watched the game because it was kind of anemic for the most part. They ran the ball somewhat
anemic,
well, but
both sides. Yep. Cowboys were even worse. But you look at what's happened here in the NFC South just in the first week.
Yeah.
Olsen's out. The Panthers don't look very good offensively. The Falcons lose 2 defensive starters, really good defensive players, to injury.
Mm-hmm.
The Saints, who thought they were one player away from the Super Bowl, so they trade up for a defensive end in the draft, get 48 points hung on them by Ryan Fitzmagic.
Who dropped his shoulder and took someone into the end zone.
Exactly.
That was ridiculous.
Yeah, he's bowling over Saints defenders at the goal line and running for first downs to clinch the game. That was an embarrassment for the Saints. And you got the Bucs, who everyone thought was going to be the dead last place team now, taking on the Super Bowl champs with a shot to win because Fitzmagic, he could beat the Eagles this week.
Yep. And we bring this up too because Atlanta first posted as a 4-point favorite against the Carolina Panthers, now up to a 6-point favorite over at the Westgate Superbook against Carolina. And when we first saw these numbers together on Monday, I asked you about it, and I remember you thinking that you were leaning towards Atlanta in this spot against Carolina, right?
I still do lean towards Atlanta. I mean, the problem with the Falcons, you got two really good defensive players who were done.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that was going to be the case early in the week. But at the same time, Falcons are off a really hideous performance Thursday night. They got too many weapons to be held to 12 points in pretty much any game. And I think they do bounce back in this spot against, let's face it, the Panthers didn't look that good to me. I just thought the Cowboys were a colossal disappointment in week one. Not that I had high expectations for them, but they were dead. They showed up with nothing last week. So I don't give Carolina a ton of credit for what happened in week one. I think the Falcons do bounce back and win this game. I'm not gonna lay the points. Let's put it this way, because I think the Falcons win, but I don't want to lay this number with what should be a pretty competitive game between division rivals. I mean, it's any of those three teams can win that division.
Yeah.
Bucks.
Yep.
Falcons, Panthers.
Yes. Get the Saints out of there. You give up 48 points, you're done. 2 notes on the Falcons that work in their favor. Of course, the extra time to get ready because you played on Thursday and you're going to be at home. That helps. And also, practice today, Luke Kuechly was not limited because he was injured near the end of that Cowboys game. There's worries that he was not going to play. He wasn't limited in practice. So that, of course, helps him and Sean Lee. And I think you threw in Bobby Wagner last season, right? As the 3 linebackers that when they're out, those defenses completely.
Oh, no doubt about it. Bobby Wagner, I think, is probably the most valuable guy to the defense. Sean Lee right behind him, and then Luke Kuechly right there with Sean Lee. I don't know. You could probably interchange those guys. Those are, to me, the 3 most valuable linebackers. You take any of those teams out, any of those players out for that week, I'm going to look to bet against those teams.
Coming up, Matt Humans and I go inside the world of Twitter. As most of you know, that could be a very crazy place to go. That's next on Inside the Numbers, the best of VSiN.
This is Inside the Numbers, the Pro Football Edition, the very best information from VSiN's hosts and guests on this week's biggest pro football games. You can listen to VSiN on SiriusXM Channel 204. Watch us online at vsin.com and follow us on Twitter at VSiN Live.
If you didn't catch VSiN last week, here's some of what you missed.
And I'll tell you, this will be one of the heaviest bet games of the weekend, just given its position. And again, we love having that first Monday night with a doubleheader. Is very exciting for us. Wish we had it every weekend.
I love that because it will be the most bet game. And we got some other good ones. I think the New England game is New England and Texans. That should be a great game. The Thursday night game, I think, is a terrific game. Yep. But when we count the dollars bet, it'll be on that last game.
Well, everything will be going to it, too, right?
Everything's going
carry
to
over.
But, Vinny, you know the psychology of bettors. They're either going to press if they're ahead, and they're going to try to get even if they're behind.
The public ended up being on Michigan. That game had so many line moves. It was incredible. Notre Dame opened like 3, then Michigan went to 2, then Notre Dame went to 2, then Michigan ended up closing 2.5.
Yeah.
That game was all over the board. And you know what? I mean, people want to hang Harbaugh, but, it was a close game. I mean, statistically, they had the same amount of first downs, same amount of yards. Michigan had 1 more turnover, and Notre Dame made 1 or 2 more plays than they did. Very even game. So if you're a Michigan fan, don't hang yourself yet. I still think you got life.
Hey, let's review them all. Let's see where the discrepancies were. Nothing real different and all that. I nailed the Chargers right on the button there. Until you get to New Orleans. Right. I said New Orleans -10 against the Browns. You said it's 8.5. Give me the Saints all day long in that one. I don't love the Redskins at 5.5, that's for sure. Rams, now again, that's kind of... Here's the other one, San Francisco. And again, we haven't seen the Lions play, so it's a bit of a stupid exercise. But I have the Niners more than a field goal in this one. So the Saints and the Niners, to me, are the ones that jump off the page. And I kind of like the Bears Monday night. Now, these are all first reaction.
The Steelers appear ready to start James Conner this week, even if Bell reports. I think Conner's a pretty good back. Now, he's not Le'Veon Bell, but I don't think there's a monstrous drop-off. How about you?
No, I agree. I mean, the point spread's not going to adjust, in large proportion because of, going from Le'Veon Bell to Conner. Certainly it's a drop-off, but, when you have as much talent on offense as the Steelers do, I think they're going to be okay.
Welcome back to Inside the Numbers, where you get the best insight from VSiN's experts on this weekend's biggest pro football games.
We're back on Inside the Numbers, the best of VSiN. One of the most popular segments on The Edge is called Twitter Chatter. It's where we take something someone tweets, sometimes informative, sometimes downright stupid, and see how it pertains to this week's games. Here's a look at Matt Humans and I breaking down this week's tweets.
First tweet at Pro Football Talk. Several Steelers missing practice on Wednesday with injuries, including Ben Roethlisberger, offensive lineman David DeCastro, of course, probably no Le'Veon Bell again this weekend. So a lot of Steelers out, and people saw what the Chiefs did last week, going on the road and beating the Los Angeles Chargers. Seeing 4.5s here on Pittsburgh. I imagine the Chiefs will be a public dog this week, right?
I think they'll be the public dog of the week.
Oh, I hate that.
And you don't want to be on that side.
No,
very
you
often
don't.
In the NFL, when a public dog is so popular, you got to look the other way.
I can't do it. I didn't pick that game.
Last week, I was on probably the most popular public dog, which was New York Giants.
Oh, yeah.
We came up a little bit short. I felt like the Giants should have won that game. They had plenty of opportunities, but, hey, they didn't get it done. This week, I think the Chiefs will be the most popular public dog on the rotation. Like you said, everyone watched how explosive that offense was last week. Tyreek Hill was a big play waiting to happen. Patrick Mahomes looked good. You watch the Steelers. Big Ben turns it over, throws 3 picks. They turn it over 6 times as a team.
Still didn't lose.
Tie the Browns.
Still didn't lose.
Exactly. You're -5 in turnovers. Still
Did you
didn't
see,
lose
by
the
the
game.
way, somebody said this is the best start for the Browns since 04?
Yeah, it is. We talked about that Monday.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the best start ever. 0-1.
It's hilarious.
That's
best start since 2004.
That's
for the
awesome.
Browns. That's kind of hard to believe.
I also think here's another public dog this week, and I won't take this dog because I think this is a bad spot. People saw what Atlanta did on Thursday night, and it opened up at 5, Atlanta -5, got to 5.5, got to 6. I feel like Carolina is also going to be a public dog this weekend, right?
I don't know. Not to the level the Chiefs will be.
That's fair.
You know, they might be, but the Chiefs are going to be more popular. The problem with the Falcons in this spot here is you just lost 2 of your best defensive players, and it's not easy to just plug somebody in and replace 2 guys like that. So I'm a little bit initially I like the Falcons this week, but you got defensive starters dropping like flies, and I still don't like Steve Sarkisian and think he has no clue what he's doing. He's in over his head as an NFL offensive coordinator. But to get back to the Chiefs quickly, a lot of people who watched the Browns-Steelers game last week came away with a very negative impression of the Steelers. And if you watch the Chiefs, you're just blown away. Hey, it's an exciting team. It looks almost too easy to take the 5.5 when it was out there. It was 5.5, dropped all the way to 4. Now it's 4.5, pretty much painted on the board. You said possibly no Le'Veon Bell, or probably. I think he's done as a Steeler. I heard Brent Musburger talk about it yesterday, that the Steelers are going to look into trading Bell. I don't expect to see him back. It's just a lot of the stuff I've read here in the past couple of days makes me think that, he was put off by a lot of the comments that were made by the offensive lineman. And I think they're going to part ways. I think Pittsburgh and Le'Veon Bell are going to part ways. He's not going to be out there this week.
At Pro Football Talk, Drew Brees says Baker Mayfield, quote, can be a lot better than me. Drew Brees will likely become the all-time passing leader, by the way, at the end of the 2018 season. But he thinks that the rookie out of Oklahoma could be better than him. What say you?
Well, I'm not buying that statement. I think Brees is trying to pump up a kid, which is what a lot of veterans should do. But if you're going to tell me that Baker Mayfield's going to end up as the all-time passing leader in the NFL, I would say no. I don't think – it's hard to predict he's going to win a Super Bowl. He's going to set all sorts of passing records. Can he be a little bit better physically? He could probably have a couple big seasons. How can you top what Drew Brees has done in terms of statistics and the fact that he has won a Super Bowl on top of that?
And how about recreating himself too? Because remember, people forget that he started his career with the Chargers.
Yeah, blew out his shoulder, and there was a chance he would never play again. And in fact, the genius Nick Saban picked Dante Culpepper over Brees to be his starting quarterback in Miami.
I forgot about that. I forgot about that. Saving went with Culpepper over Breeze. That's right. Because they drafted, remember, the Chargers drafted Phillip Rivers and moved Breeze out. He only spent 5 seasons in San Diego. He's been in New Orleans since 2006. And a Super Bowl championship. This guy really reinvented himself.
Yeah, he and Sean Payton have been together for a long time, and it's been a historic run for those two guys. I think Baker Mayfield's going to be a really good NFL quarterback, but to say he's going to be better than Drew Brees with all the records he's got and a Super Bowl in his back pocket, I don't think he can make that statement.
Sam Bradford will start against one of his former teams. Sam Bradford playing the Rams. That'll be coming up. Rams took him, remember, number 1 overall back in 2010, and you're looking at the number here in Vegas. It is a big spread. Biggest one of the week. Rams minus 13 at home against the Cardinals. Only question I have, when is it time for the Rook? When is it Josh Rosen time in Arizona?
Yeah, this is a tweet from Pro Football Talk about Bradford having no special feelings about facing his former team. I think this is his last start at quarterback for his current team. If the Cards go to L.A. and get blown out by the Rams, let's say, or Bradford doesn't at least play really well, how can you not go to Josh Rosen? Right now, Sam, I think you and I were both cautiously optimistic about the Cardinals going into the season.
I mean, a lot more than you, for sure. I was very optimistic.
I was cautiously optimistic. What I watched last week was a disaster. And if you had to rate the NFC teams right now, the Arizona Cardinals would be your lowest rated team in the NFC.
I think I still might put Seattle below them. I want to see what Seattle does this weekend, week 2. Against Chicago.
Well, the reason I rate Seattle higher is Russell Wilson. The Cards don't have a quarterback, and the Seahawks have one of the best in the NFL. So I cannot rate the Cardinals better than the Seahawks. If you switch to Josh Rosen and let this kid develop and use this year constructively to say, hey, this is going to be a growing pains year. We're going to put in the rookie, and next year is when we're really going to shoot for playoff contention. I understand that. It's a tough sell to say, we're going to put the immobile veteran Sam Bradford in here, and we're just going to lose week after week. If you get blown out again this week, don't you think you have to make the quarterback
Got to make a move. You also have to find a way to get David Johnson the football.
Oh, yeah. No
14
doubt.
Touches week 1.
That was
14?
very disappointing. Yeah, very disappointing.
I mean, figure it out. John Gruden, here's the tweet from @Paul Gutierrez, @P Gutierrez ESPN. Raiders head coach John Gruden on Amari Cooper. Quote, you look at the film, we had him wide open deep. We didn't go there. He was open a couple of times, and for whatever reason, we didn't go that route. Yeah, we want to get him going. Easier said than done. Amari Cooper, 1 catch, 9 yards on Monday night.
Derek Carr played an outstanding first half. He played the worst second half imaginable, and obviously that's going to stick with John Gruden and a lot of people who watch that game. You can't play much worse than Derek Carr did in the second half of that game. Gruden here throwing Carr under the bus, right? Amari Cooper opened several times. Our quarterback didn't see him, didn't go to him. So obviously he expects much better play from him this week. And I don't think you and I have talked about the Martavis Bryant thing yet.
No, he's back. I saw he's back.
A week after the Raiders let go of Martavis Bryant, and John Gruden said, maybe we'll bring this guy back next year. Next year became next week after such a poor start offensively. And
he's going to be wide receiver too.
He's going to be targeted often in this. He's going to be used as a weapon, a deep threat in this offense this week. I think it's interesting here to throw Martavis Bryant in here, facing a suspension from the league a week after you said you're done. Maybe we'll bring him back next year, and now he's going to be in this offense this week in Denver. I want to see how it changes things for the Raiders. I think it's kind of a desperation move.
Up next, we go back to the legend, going over this week's lines in the Westgate Super Contest.
This is Inside the Numbers, the Pro Football Edition, the very best information from VSiN's hosts and guests on this week's biggest pro football games. You can listen to VSiN on SiriusXM Channel 204. Watch us online at vsin.com and follow us on Twitter at VSiN Live.
If you didn't catch VSiN last week, here's some of what you missed.
And I'll tell you, this will be one of the heaviest bet games of the weekend, just given its position. And again, we love having that first Monday night with a doubleheader. Is very exciting for us. I wish we had it every weekend.
I love that because it will be the most bet game.
Yeah.
And we got some other good ones. I think the New England game is New England and Texans. That should be a great game. The Thursday night game, I think, is a terrific game.
Yep.
But when we count the dollars bet, it'll be on that last game.
Well,
That's
everything will
gonna
be going to it,
Yeah,
too, right?
everything's
Let's
going
carry
to it.
over.
But, Vinny, the psychology of bettors. They're either going to press if they're ahead, and they're going to try to get even if they're behind.
The public ended up being on Michigan. That game had so many line moves. It was incredible. Notre Dame opened like 3, then Michigan went to 2, then Notre Dame went to 2, then Michigan ended up closing 2.5.
Yeah.
That game was all over the board. And you know what? I mean, people want to hang Harbaugh, but it was a close game. I mean, statistically, they had the same amount of first downs, same amount of yards. Michigan had one more turnover, and Notre Dame made 1 or 2 more plays than they did. Very even game. So if you're a Michigan fan, don't hang yourself yet. I still think you got life.
Hey, let's review them all. Let's see where the discrepancies were. Nothing real different and all that. I nailed the Chargers right on the button there. Until you get to New Orleans.
Right.
I said New Orleans minus 10 against the Browns. You said it's 8.5. Give me the Saints all day long in that one. I don't love the Redskins at 5.5, that's for sure. Ramsdale, again, that's kind of... Here's the other one, San Francisco. And again, we haven't seen the Lions play, so it's a bit of a stupid exercise. But I have the Niners more than a field goal in this one. So the Saints and the Niners, to me, are the ones that jump off the page. And I kind of like the Bears Monday night. Now, these are all first reaction.
The Steelers appear ready to start James Conner this week, even if Bell reports. I think Conner's a pretty good back. Now, he's not Le'Veon Bell, but I don't think there's a monstrous drop-off. How about you?
No, I agree. I mean, the point spread's not going to adjust, in large proportion because of, going from Le'Veon Bell to Conner. Certainly it's a drop-off, but, when you have as much talent on offense as the Steelers do, I think they're going to be okay.